Welcome to the MS-Perspektive podcast, Perspective with a K as I'm German. I'm Nele van Horsten, MS patient, patient advocate and author. I'm bringing you interviews, inspiration and information about living with multiple sclerosis and show you ways how you can positively influence the disease and make the best out of your diagnosis. On ms-perspektive.com you will find the show notes, 11 free tips as a PDF and lots of other information. And now the show begins. Thanks for tuning in again and welcome to episode number 131, Living with MS. Joke Soetaert on empowering youth, patient advocacy and life as a midwife. And now enjoy the interview. Hello Joke, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show and thanks for taking time for that interview today.
Hello, Nele. I'm really grateful that you thought of me and I'm so happy to be part of this podcast.
And before we actually start with the podcast, it would be lovely, or with the interview, if you could introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a bit about your work as a midwife.
So, hello everyone. My name is Joke Soetaert and I am 33 years old. I live in Belgium and I work as a midwife. And most of the time I take care of premature and sick babies, but I also work on the maternity ward with mothers who have just given birth and their newborns, pregnant women, and women recovering from gynecological surgery.
Okay, interesting. How did you experience the moment of your MS diagnosis? I think it was in 2019. And how was it for you both personally and professionally?
Well, it actually started about 9 months earlier, in the summer of 2018. I was about to change jobs. I was working in a large hospital in the surgical theater. And after 5 years, I was finally going to follow my dream of working as a midwife. And just before that change, I had an episode of optic neuritis, and the neurologist told me that I had a higher risk of developing MS and suggested regular follow-up at neurology. So 9 months later, I was settling into my new job, and I had just finished 4 very busy night shifts. After the last one, I felt a slight numbness in my fingertips. The neurologist had told me that almost any symptom could be linked to MS, so of course it crossed my mind. But I didn't really believe it. I was still in denial. The next morning, I woke up with the same feeling in the fingers of my other hand, so that could no longer be a coincidence. I contacted my neurologist, and very quickly I was admitted. So both MRIs, brain and spinal cord were planned along with other tests. On Monday, I was admitted, and the first MRI was of my spinal cord. It already showed a fairly large white matter lesion, and because of that, I received the diagnosis of MS the same afternoon. It felt like the ground disappeared beneath my feet. People often say that after receiving a serious diagnosis, you only remember a small part of what the doctor tells you, and I can definitely confirm that. The next day, the brain MRI turned out to be completely normal. I had no lesions. I also began another round of corticosteroids, 3 infusions, and I was allowed to go home during the day because in my hospital the infusions are given at night. So, 2 days after my diagnosis, I was with my boyfriend. We were in a relationship of about 1.5 years. But suddenly, he told me that he couldn't handle it anymore. He said he was afraid of the future, especially of the idea that I might end up in a wheelchair. And that came completely out of nowhere. That actually overshadowed the diagnosis itself. For me, this was much worse. My whole future fell apart, and I had to completely rethink what my life would look like. And that was very intense. About work, I wanted to return to work right away, mostly for distraction and to be with my colleagues. But my neurologist gave me 2 weeks of sick leave. She called it bereavement leave. That week on Friday, I had a resuscitation training course at the university hospital, and I didn't want to miss that. But it turned out to be too much. The long hours of standing, listening, and concentrating not sleeping enough and not eating enough during the last 5 days. So I fainted. Luckily, I was surrounded by anesthesiologists, emergency doctors, midwives, and nurses. So I was in the best hands. But it showed me how important it is to take some time to recover.
Wow, that's with your former boyfriend, that's an ugly story, and I can
Yeah.
totally imagine. I was not in a lovely relationship when I received my diagnosis. I was not with a good guy, so I can totally feel how you felt. A bit, not totally, but I can feel it a bit. Yeah, sorry to hear that. What changed the most for you after being diagnosed in your mindset, your lifestyle, or your approach to work?
Whoa, a lot changed for me after my diagnosis. Before, I was kind of lazy and I didn't really had a clear goal on life. I just made sure I could get through each day, but my free time wasn't really dedicated to anything. I knew it was healthy to move and exercise, but it didn't happen very often. So after my MS diagnosis, of course, I immediately started reading some scientific articles about exercise, mindset, nutrition, sleep, stress, and all those things. And that helped me shift very quickly. During the 2 weeks of bereavement leave, I already started thinking about what I could do with this new reality. I quickly realized I didn't have fatigue or really limiting symptoms, so I started gathering knowledge immediately. And now, 6 years later, I can say that I try very hard to make a difference for myself in all these areas. And the overarching factor, of course, is mindset. I was able to step out of the victim role quite quickly, which is often not easy. By looking at it from a different perspective, I could even see very early on the opportunities that my MS diagnosis could bring. A few months later, I already started thinking about how I could find my place in the MS world, how I could be meaningful, not just for myself by gaining more knowledge, feeling better, and meeting peers, but also for the wider MS community. And at work, I felt very supported by my colleagues. I think it also helped that they work in the medical field and they asked thoughtful questions, which I really appreciated. After those 2 weeks, I returned to work in the neonatal unit and I had to lift a baby. And I told my colleague, wow, thankfully I'm in the neonatal unit because here you only lift half of the weight of healthy newborns. And that was my first joke. And it set the tone. I often made jokes about it at first. And after a while, it didn't really matter anymore. And it didn't occupy my mind as much. But that was very important in my process, giving myself and my colleagues the space to talk about it.
Great. Yes, and being humorous is also good. And it's fantastic. I mean, you stepping so soon into patient advocacy work. If I remember my experience, it took me 15 years to talk openly in the public about it, or 16 years. So
But the times were
congratulations on
different,
that.
huh? So
Times
long
were
ago.
different, of course,
Yeah.
yes. So we are talking, yes, about 2004. So it
Yeah,
was
totally different.
different. But still, you can feel very proud. I
Thank
just want to
you.
say that.
Kind of you.
So, how did your medical background influence the way you understood and processed your diagnosis? You already teased that a bit.
Yes, in my eyes, it had a huge impact. Normally, I like to know everything, especially about a topic I understand or that's my area of expertise. But leading up to my MS diagnosis, when I was considered at risk, I didn't look much into it because I was convinced I wouldn't get MS. I was absolutely certain of that. And of course, I was completely wrong, and the diagnosis really hit me hard. But I picked up myself and immediately started reading and learning because I could grasp the knowledge fairly easily. I quickly had space to explore the psychological side of processing a diagnosis. We can actually speak of it as kind of living loss. It's a loss of the life you knew until that moment, a life without worries in that area. And you don't expect that you will need to make adjustments or be flexible in certain parts of your life. And now, 6 years later, it turns out that it hasn't really been the case at all in my situation. I haven't had to make any adjustments. I still work full time, early morning shifts, days, evenings, night shifts, including weekends and holidays. And those can be very tough, but that's the case for all of my colleagues. So I don't really experience any extra burden. Even in terms of sports and physical activity, I've actually improved. I used to do almost nothing, like I said, and now I exercise a lot. Since my diagnosis, I also took on several challenges, like we climbed part of the Mont Blanc, I ran marathon, and I walked 80 kilometers, the entire Belgian coastline in just one day.
Wow.
And my mindset has evolved enormously, which I find very fascinating, and I am very grateful for that.
Great, really great. And it's lovely you are sharing your story here because it can hopefully help other people who don't know you yet, to empower them and give them the mental strength to work on their own goals.
Yeah, that would
S-
be wonderful.
So you've been involved in scientific research since 2019, right from the beginning. What has it been like to participate so actively in MS-related studies?
Yes, that's correct. While I was looking up information about MS, I came across some scientific studies that I was eligible to participate in, and I jumped in without hesitation. The first study was about walking fatigue, and it went really well. The researcher was very, very kind and immediately made me feel comfortable. And that's basically how it continued. So far, I've participated in more than 10 studies, and it's always been a very positive experience because of the great contact with the researchers. They are passionate people, and we shared that enthusiasm. I was also able to help them connect with other people with MS, and I was always very interested in everything behind the studies, including the results afterwards, and I find that very fascinating. I've taken part in studies in Belgium and also in the Netherlands, and I would definitely recommend it. You get to see your own results, but also the group results and the differences within the group, often comparing people with MS to healthy control groups. And in some studies, you also get the chance to try out different kinds of equipment, which is very interesting.
Yep, yep. I do a jumping test, which is normally used for people who do ski jumping.
Oh,
Uh, and there they try to find out how much you can see early differences in having less control or less power in your feet and in your legs. And that's very interesting. I mean, like you said,
oh.
it's equipment you normally are not using.
Yeah.
So
And so the goal is to go as high as possible, to jump as high as possible.
yes, and to compare it with yourself, so not comparing it with other people, but
Okay.
of course, I mean, it's always compared with healthy controls, but you are compared against yourself over time, and then you can see is something changing in order to realize if there is some smoldering MS going
Okay.
happening in the background. And of course, that is not an equipment everybody could have, but you need to do different kind of studies and tests to find out where you can see small degradation in power or other things, right?
And
So
can you train something like that? Like to jump? Can you train that?
you could. I mean, I don't do it. That would probably change things. But then we have a walking mat, and you get asked questions, so you are not cognitively fully concentrating on walking
It's dual tasks.
to do a task.
Yeah.
And that's of course it's all interesting. You are doing stuff, but it motivates me to always use the playgrounds for the kids when when I'm there with the kids, because of course I want to be good there.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
and yeah, it
You want to
motivates.
be as good as possible. Yeah.
Yeah. So how does being both a patient and part of the scientific projects shape your view of MS?
Well, being so involved in scientific research and participating in these studies gave me a really good feeling right away. It showed me that many researchers are working on MS every single day. A large group is looking for new and better treatments, but in my case, the studies were always about the impact of exercise or cognition, for example. And knowing that this kind of research is happening is very hopeful. They have already discovered a lot about what can have a positive effect for people with MS and how people with MS can be supported. And studies often show that certain interventions, like following an exercise program, can even have a bigger impact on people with MS than on the healthy control group. For example, if someone wants to start cycling, walking, or running, even if it's harder for people with MS because of the condition or because of lower general fitness, they often see greater improvements in many areas than someone without MS following the same program. So the gains can be bigger, even if the effort is also greater. And even if the final results is sometimes still less than the average healthy person, it doesn't really matter. What matters is the healthy impact it has on your body, your heart, your blood vessels, and your overall health. This has given me a lot of inspiration. I feel supported and part of a community, and I know that many people are working on this. Things aren't standing still, and that feeling is really comforting.
Absolutely, yes. That is one very big positive output of my podcast as well. Seeing
Yeah,
all these motivated people around the world doing so much research and with so much heart in it, and
they are giving their life for MS. Yeah.
yeah, so that's really great. So, by all this inside view, what role do you think should people living with MS play in research and medical decision making?
People with MS naturally play a crucial role in research because without participants, many studies would not be possible. And it's also important to have a variety of participants depending on the purpose of the study or the eligibility criteria. But diversity in age and gender and background and ethnicity, that's a difficult word, ethnicity, I think it is.
Yeah, it is.
It's very important because there can be differences in how a body responds to something or how certain parameters develop, both regarding MS and general health. And nowadays, researchers are also increasingly focusing on starting from the perspective of people with MS. This means that we get more and more opportunities to be involved in other aspects of the study to help shape it from the beginning. For example, we can participate in discussions about whether a certain topic, intervention, or medication should be studied. Usually, patients who have received specific training can be part of this process. And there is, of course, a lot of paperwork involved in research, like consent forms, where participants are clearly informed about what will happen, the potential risks, who to contact, and that their data will be handled anonymously. And patients can review these forms and suggest improvements, for instance, if certain sentences are too difficult to understand or if the information could be presented in simpler language. They can also help highlight what is most important for patients. And another area where patients can contribute is in supporting participant commitment. Some studies last for months, requiring participants to follow certain procedures correctly for the results to be valid. And patients can prove advice on how to keep motivation high and how to engage both people with MS and healthy participants who are willing to dedicate to the study. And even after the study is completed, trained patients can give feedback on the results or help interpret them. Sometimes participants are informed about what was discovered and what wasn't, or what was expected but didn't turn out as predicted. And this feedback can help guide future research, tailored to the group of participants and healthy controls. So we are increasingly involved in the entire research process, which I find incredibly interesting and empowering. And without my diagnosis, I would have had no connection to MS. But now it has sparked my interest, become a passion, and I can make a difference because of my perspective can be valuable to others. It's really rewarding. It's a way of collaborating to gain more knowledge about MS. And about medical decision making, people living with MS should also play an active role in that. Their experiences and perspectives are crucial for making healthcare decisions that truly meet the patient's needs.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember one point in the Yopati program where natalizumab, they tried to take off due to side effects, serious side effects that happened, and then the patients brought it back because they said, yeah, okay, you need to check so these side effects don't happen, or we detect them early enough, but it's such a good medication, we want to keep it because it helps
Yeah,
people with serious MS. And I think that's really a good improvement in general, that patients are asked and
yeah,
our voice counts when it
yeah,
comes
that we
to
have a
things.
voice. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So let's talk a little bit more about you empowering JAWS advocacy. As a coordinator of the JAWS division of MS-Liga Vlaanderen, what are the goals and core values of your work?
I have been a volunteer for about 4 years now. I'm the coordinator of the youth division at MS-Liga Vlaanderen, indeed, which is the patient organization for people with MS. We focus on young people up to 35 years old and their surroundings. And these are some of our goals. We want to start from the needs of young people with MS. What do they need? What challenges do they face? Where can we make a difference? And we want them to feel that they are not alone and that there is a place where they can turn with their questions, concerns, or simply for relaxation and connection. And in addition, we believe it is very important to provide accurate and understandable information so that young people feel stronger and can take control of their own lives. Empowerment is a key word for us.
Yeah, sounds good. So 3 more years for you. Sounds like
Yeah, something like that.
it's in that direction. Yes, I'm too old. I'm turning 45 next. No, this month. We have already September this month. See, I belong to the in between, the middle aged. Why is a dedicated space for young people with MS so important?
Well, young people, so in our case, up to 35 years old, have a very different life world compared to slightly older people. Occasionally, very young children are diagnosed with MS, but we haven't met them at our activities yet. The youngest people we usually see are teenagers. And sometimes there's a teen who is still in school. They are thinking about studying, about what job they want in the future, and getting a diagnosis like MS can bring a lot of uncertainty, fear, and stress. They are often looking for stories from others who, for example, are working in their dream job and want to know if that is possible and how. Of course, everyone's experience is different and you can't predict it. And my idea is that at that moment, you should just pursue your dreams. If things becomes more challenging later, you can adjust. But it would be a shame to give up an active dream job just because of the fear for future fatigue or mobility issues, for example. So many of our members are in their early 20s, building their lives, starting their first jobs, entering relationships. And we also have young parents, young moms and dads, and we often organize monthly activities that are family friendly, where they can bring their little children. This gives families a chance to enjoy activities together and for the children to meet other kids who have a parent with MS. That can be very enriching when they are a bit older. And over the years, MS has less impact on life. That thanks to better medication and faster diagnosis and improved supportive therapies like physiotherapy and occupational therapy. So, fortunately, the impact of MS is becoming smaller. Many recently diagnosed people are very active and want to keep doing active things. And MS no longer fits the old image where you automatically end up in a wheelchair. Of course, some people still experience that at a young age, but fortunately, it's less common. And there's also a big difference when you compare the average age group of our members with groups of people in their 60s, 70s, or 80s. Those people often have had MS since before modern medication existed, so there's such a big difference. I remember one of my first fears when I tried to meet other people with MS. How would they be? Would everyone be in a wheelchair? Would everyone complain or be negative? But when I joined the youth division, some young people did use wheelchairs or crutches or walkers, but you quickly stop noticing that because the group was so positive. And often the activities weren't even about MS. Of course, there was space to talk about it, but it was mostly about life, current challenges, and supporting each other. And there is so much inspiration within the group, and it's wonderful to see.
Fantastic. Sounds really great, yes. Can you share a moment that shows how your work empowers others?
Yeah, that's a nice question. Thank you. um, I think this happens in different ways and on different levels. Sometimes young people come to us and say things like, for example, 3 years ago, I attended your youth conference for the first time and I was completely overwhelmed, but I could see how passionate you all were and how passionate the MS experts were in presenting information in the most accessible way possible, trying to inspire us. And since then, they've taken steps. They feel much better. They've also attended other activities and met other people. And people often keep in touch outside the activities, and many friendships continue beyond our events. And we also really try to encourage young people to take control of their own care, to take that empowering role. For example, when it comes to information about MS, like a new treatment, we encourage them to be well informed when talking to their doctor, to really engage in the conversation and to practice shared decision making, which means looking at the aspects to matter most to you. For instance, I want my treatment to be as effective as possible, or I want to go on a world trip. So it's important that my medication allows me to do that. Or I really don't like going to hospitals, so I would prefer something I can do at home. And you should also build the best team of MS professionals around you, starting with your neurologists. I often hear young people say, I barely know my neurologist's name because I see him or her so rarely. And I don't think they know that running is my hobby, or that I'm concerned about having children, or that managing life with my two toddlers at home can be challenging. All aspects of life matter. If your doctor doesn't know about these things, how can he or she then provide the best care for you? So we strongly encourage young people, if it's not a good fit with your doctor, find someone else. You will have MS for life. And while there may not be a cure yet, it's important to find a doctor with whom you really form a team. Someone who supports you and help you pursue your goals and live your life as fully as possible. And it's also a bonus if the relationship is pleasant and comfortable, so you can even discuss awkward or personal things. And in that context, many people have come to us and said, thanks to you, I took the step to choose a new neurologist or a new physiotherapist. And that has really helped me move forward. And that gives me so much joy. You just need to find the right match.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. And my first neurologist was not the right choice. The second one was. And I was traveling for a long distance for 200 kilometers from Berlin to Dresden for 13 years. And then I decided to, after 1.5 years at the North Sea, where it was even longer, to move back to my hometown to have a short distance. Yes, but it's really important. It's really
Well, I was amazingly lucky to directly I came directly with the right neurologist for me. It's definitely a match in the passion and in the enthusiasm, and that means so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So important. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about collaboration and congresses. We actually met at the EMSP, and I know that you attend and contribute to national and international MS conferences like ECTRIMS, like EMSP. What does being there mean to you?
ECTRIMS, for example, is the largest MS conference in the world with around 9,000 neurologists, researchers, industry professionals, so people who are involved with medications or devices or technologies. And it's really the place to be. I see it as the start of the MS year because everything starts there. At the conference, there are many meetings and you meet many new people, get introduced, recognize people from LinkedIn, and or someone taps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, are you Joke? Can we get to know each other? Can we talk for a moment?" And your head becomes a whirlwind of ideas, new projects, things you've heard. And it's also a time to speak with industry representatives. Can we collaborate? And we feel there's a need here, or we had this idea. And essentially, all of that happens over 3 days. And I think it's very important for our youth division to be there. And the rest of the year, we develop everything we discussed. And beyond networking, which happens naturally because almost everyone in the MS world is there, the conference is about, of course, sharing information. Some of it is already known, but often it's very in depth, and sometimes it's completely new. For example, new guidelines or medications are often presented there. Every evening, there's a poster session about almost 2,000 posters. Research groups present their studies or part of their studies and results that haven't been published anywhere else. So it's about scanning for what's interesting for us and what I can take from it. And then when you're back home, you can go deeper. The researchers are also at their posters, so ready to discuss their work. So you can get extra information directly from the source or have a conversation about it. And that's also how we, Nele, met each other recently at the EMSP conference in Prague a few months ago. I'm sure we had crossed paths many times at other international events, but never formally met until your presentation last year. And that was really nice. A conference like this is basically 3 days completely immersed in MS. From morning to evening, everything is about MS. So I try to get up early to fit in a workout or a run. And mostly you already see someone in the gym and I can guess from their profile that they might be going to ECTRIMS too. And you start the conversation. Then I go showering and getting ready. And at breakfast, most people are already wearing their badge, and some will come and sit at your table. Sorry, can we have a quick meeting? I have an urgent question and I won't get to ask otherwise. And it could be about what we as a youth division think about something, or it can be about my personal perspective. And then you go back to your room to freshen up, and then the entire cities, like thousands of people, are heading to the conference. And on the way, you already meet people and start conversations. Um, and I also try to post a small report with pictures every day. So it never stops. You don't really get to sleep very early, but I'm clearly very enthusiastic about these events and I really enjoy them. They are amazing. It's like soaking everything in with all of my senses.
Sounds great. Yes. And this time I think there is a party in the Barcelona Aquarium. Ah, I would love to go there. But yeah, you might go there.
I will
Work
check my
hard, party
planning.
hard. Because it's limited in people who can join, so you probably
Okay.
should check it out. It
Yeah.
was sent in our WhatsApp group of the Multiple Sclerosis Management Master's Program. Everybody who
Yeah.
studied, some of them are joining ECTRIMS, and yeah, they wrote and I'm like, oh, I would love to go there. I've been to the aquarium, but not partying there. Anyhow, you recently presented a poster about prevention based on your own experiences. What was your key message?
Yes, that's correct. At the EMSP annual conference, which brings together European patient organizations, there was a call to present a poster from the patient perspective. So I choose to focus on comorbidities, which are the presence of one or more additional medical conditions occurring alongside a primary disease, and in this case, MS, and prevention. My key message was that while medication is important in managing MS, a holistic approach can make a real difference. From my own experience with obesity and hypertension, I've learned that lifestyle interventions like exercise, healthy eating, stress management, and also regular follow up with healthcare professionals can improve both physical health and mental resilience. Empowering patients to take an active role in their care and addressing comorbidities in a coordinated way is essential for better long-term outcomes.
Yeah.
It's getting harder, my speech.
Yeah, I'm asking you for too long, but please stay a little bit longer with me. How do you build bridges between professionals, pharma, and people living with MS, Joke?
Building bridges between professionals, pharma, and people living with MS is all about creating open, respectful, and transparent communication. It starts with listening to each other's perspectives. People with MS share their lived experiences. Professionals bring their clinical and research expertise, and pharma can provide insight into treatments and innovations. And by organizing meetings, conferences, and collaborative projects, everyone can work together towards a common goals. It's also important to involve patients from the very beginning, like I mentioned before about the scientific research topic. So their needs and priorities help shape research, treatment development, and education initiatives. And when everyone is aligned, it leads to better outcomes for people living with MS.
Yes. So, from your perspective, Joke, what does true patient engagement look like?
From my perspective, true patient engagement means involving people with MS at every stage, not just as participants, but as active partners. It's about listening to, having our experiences and priorities valued, and helping shape research, treatments, and healthcare decisions. Real engagement includes contributing to study design, reviewing patient materials, giving feedback on outcomes, and helping translate complex information into something understandable for others. And it's not just consultation, it's collaboration. But at an individual level, so for everyone with MS, patient engagement means for me actively taking charge of your own situation. And that starts with gaining knowledge so that you are well informed and creating a meaningful conversations with your healthcare providers and making well-founded choices that you truly support. And this approach leads to better outcomes, and it's sometimes that continues throughout your life with every new event or challenge.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. So let's look a bit into the future. What development in MS would you most like to see in the next 5 years, Joke?
What a wonderful question. I hope to see a lot of things in the next 5 years, but I really hope we can move towards precision medicine, where doctors will be able to better predict which treatment works best for which person. So instead of a more like one size fits all approach, the treatment is really tailored to the individual living with MS. And that would allow for more informed choices, better outcomes, and I think it could make a huge difference for many people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we are actually more and more moving into that direction.
Yes. Yeah.
So, based on your journey, what do you wish more people, including professionals, understood about MS?
I've been living with MS for 6 years now, and I still don't really experience symptoms. So I don't have fatigue or other issues. So I don't feel I'm in the right position to fully answer this question. But what I do notice is that people without a chronic condition sometimes forget that even when MS seems silent, it still has an impact. It's always there in the back of your mind. You need to stick to your treatment, go for regular checkups, stay alert to new symptoms, and make sure your lifestyle is as healthy as possible. And the moment you feel something unusual, something anyone might experience, you think, is this my MS? And that has a mental impact too. And what I really appreciate is that I've never felt this was overlooked by my doctors or my medical team. They really understand this side of living with MS. And I think that's essential, the mental impact.
Yes, yes, because I think fear has everybody, no matter how your MS is. Fear is always in the package you get when you receive the diagnosis. Joke, what keeps you motivated and hopeful on difficult days?
For me, the feeling of not being alone is incredibly powerful. It has such a positive effect on me. And that's exactly what we try to create with our youth work: peer connection, but especially positive peer connection. And also knowing that I can always turn to my medical team whenever I have doubts or uncertainties, that really matters. I truly trust that I'm receiving the best treatment and the best approach tailored to me.
Hmm. Complete the sentence. For me, multiple sclerosis is.
For me, multiple sclerosis is a strength. I was able to turn my diagnosis into something very positive, into a purpose in my life, a reason to get up every day. Through my volunteer work as coordinator of the youth division, I can make a real difference for young people with MS together with my team. And in my role as a patient expert, I also contribute in different ways by engaging with pharma, hospitals, government, schools, and by being part of advisory boards in several Flemish hospitals. There, too, I can bring in my perspective and experience. And all of this gives me a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that I can actually mean something for others.
Great. Finally, what would you like to share with our listeners, whether they live with MS, support someone who does, or simply want to understand more?
I want to share that living with MS doesn't have to be the end. It can also be a new beginning. It can be a start of a life that perhaps is even happier, with more dedication to what truly makes you happy, more meaningful connections, and, like in my case, even a completely new passion where you can make a real difference. And for those living with MS, you are not alone. There are communities that understand what you're going through. And for those supporting someone, your presence matters more than you might think. And for everyone who wants to understand more, stay curious and open, because awareness is the first step towards inclusion and understanding. Focusing on connection, positivity, and the things I can do is what gives me strength. And that's something we can all carry with us.
Great. Joke, if people are now interested to stay in contact or, let's say, keep updated what you are doing, how and where can interested people find you online?
People can easily reach me through Instagram, and I also keep my LinkedIn profile up to date, where you can find a lot of information and send me a message. And for our youth division, we are active on Instagram as well, and there's information available on our website too.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you for being my guest. I hope to meet you at one of the conferences or congresses in the future again. Enjoy the ECTRIMS in Barcelona. Maybe you can still get a ticket for the aquarium party.
I will definitely try.
Yeah, and thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Nele.
Bye. I hope you enjoyed the interview, learned something new, and maybe even got inspired to raise your voice in a setting that makes sense for you. By the way, next time I will have another MS expert here on the podcast, and it will be on the topic of fighting for fair access, MS treatments and global challenges with MSIF's Anne Helmer. Anne Helme is Head of Research and Access at MS-IF International Federation, so the MS-IF in Greater London, UK. So it totally makes sense to tune in again and listen to that upcoming interview. And meanwhile, please stay as positive and active as possible. And it would be very lovely if you could recommend the podcast to whomever might be interested in the topic. If you could rate it wherever you are listening to it. And of course, I'm always interested in your feedback. So, see you next time. Bye. Thank you for listening today. I hope you found it helpful. You may also be interested in the previously published episodes and posts, which you can find at ms-perspektive.com/podcast. Perspective with a K. You can also get a free PDF with 11 tips for your positive impact on MS at ms-perspektive.com/newsletter. If you'd like to get in touch, you can reach me at nele@ms-perspektive.com or on social media. See you next time.